A woman found a half-frozen man in the snow. She nursed him back to life. Not knowing who he was, the biting wind whipped across the desolate mountains as Alara trudged through the snow-laden path, her boots sinking deep into the powder with every careful step. The sky was an angry gray, and the air was so cold it seemed to steal the warmth from her lungs, leaving them raw and aching. She had set out that morning to gather firewood for her tiny cabin perched precariously on the edge of the forest, unaware that this journey would change her life forever. As she rounded a bend near the frozen creek, her eyes caught a dark shape half buried beneath the glistening blanket of snow. At first, she thought it was a fallen tree branch, but as she approached, the shape shuddered faintly, and a hand, pale as ice, emerged. Shock froze her in place for a moment before instinct kicked in. She dropped to her knees beside the man, brushing snow from his frostbitten face. His lips were blue, and his breathing was shallow, a barely perceptible whisper against the howling wind. Without a second thought, Alara wrapped him in her thick woolen coat, hoisting him as gently as she could and carrying him toward her cabin. The journey was treacherous, each step a battle against the slick, frozen ground, but fear and determination drove her forward. Once inside, she laid him near the hearth, immediately lighting a fire that roared to life, sending warmth radiating into the cramped, wood-scented space. She checked his pulse, weak but present, and began carefully rubbing his hands and feet, desperate to restore circulation. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the occasional crack of the fire and the soft groans of the man struggling against unconsciousness. Alara worked tirelessly, wrapping him in blankets, sipping warm broth into his lips, murmuring gentle reassurances, though her own heart raced with uncertainty. Who was he? How had he ended up half-frozen in this unforgiving wilderness? She dared not think of what might have happened if she hadn't found him when she did. Slowly, color began to return to his cheeks, and his eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes as stormy and mysterious as the sky outside. Recognition was absent, leaving only confusion and fear reflected in his gaze. He tried to speak, but the words were garbled, broken, and incomprehensible. Despite the silence, a fragile connection began to form between them, a bond forged not through words, but through the shared instinct of survival and the quiet understanding that she had saved him from death. She gave him food, tending to each small need, and in return he offered her nothing but gratitude in his haunted, distant eyes. Days blurred into nights, and as he regained strength, he revealed no memory of who he was or how he had ended up in the snow. Alara's curiosity grew alongside a deepening concern. This stranger, this man rescued from the brink of death, was now a mystery she felt compelled to unravel. There were fleeting moments of warmth and connection, his eyes lingering on hers when she wasn't looking, a quiet smile when he managed a simple task. But shadows lingered in the corners of his mind, invisible but palpable. Yet even as questions mounted, one thing became certain. Their lives were now intertwined in ways neither could anticipate. Alara knew that to uncover the truth, she would have to confront the unknown, step beyond her comfortable existence, and risk everything. The man's past, hidden beneath layers of frost and memory loss, was a puzzle with pieces she didn't yet possess. And the cold, relentless wilderness outside her cabin seemed to whisper that danger, secrets, and revelations were only the beginning of a story that would test courage, trust, and the fragile warmth of the human heart. And as she prepared for another long night beside the recovering stranger, her mind couldn't stop racing with questions. Who was he really? And would discovering the truth bring salvation or unleash a storm neither of them were prepared for? Days turned into a tense, uneasy rhythm as the man, whom Alara had started calling Kale, slowly regained his physical strength but remained shrouded in memory's fog. He could walk without assistance now, though he still flinched at sudden movements or loud sounds, and the mere thought of snow outside made him shiver uncontrollably. Alara tried to coax fragments of his memory from him with gentle questions, old photographs, and even the smallest hints about the world outside her isolated cabin. But Kale's mind was a locked vault, and nothing seemed to stir the contents within. Despite the uncertainty, they fell into a pattern of quiet companionship. Alara cooking over the fire while Kale sat nearby, sketching landscapes he couldn't name, or simply staring into the dancing flames as if trying to piece together the story of his life. Their connection deepened in ways that defied explanation. Shared glances carried weight, and fleeting touches sparked warmth neither could ignore. Yet an undercurrent of tension persisted. Something in Kale's eyes suggested that he was not merely a lost traveler, but someone carrying a past so complex it was almost dangerous. Then one stormy night, the truth began to surface. A knock at the cabin door shattered the fragile safety they had built. Standing there was a man in a dark coat, his expression unreadable, his eyes fixed on Cale with a mixture of recognition and shock. "Cale," he said, voice low, urgent, and unmistakably familiar. Cale froze, as if a switch had been flipped inside him, memories flooding back in a torrent he could barely contain. The room seemed to close in on Alara as pieces of a hidden past began to reveal themselves. Cale was not just a man lost in the snow. He was a former operative, a man whose life had been shadowed by danger, betrayal, and secrets that had forced him to disappear. The man at the door, a former colleague and now a reluctant pursuer, explained that Cale had been targeted for something he possessed, something valuable that could alter the course of powerful events if it fell into the wrong hands. Fear, confusion, and betrayal washed over Cale in waves, as he struggled to reconcile the memories returning in fragmented flashes with the reality of the woman who had saved his life. Alara, feeling both fear and fierce protectiveness, realized that her quiet existence was about to collide with a world far larger, far more perilous than she had ever imagined. The night became a whirlwind of strategy, whispered plans, and tense decisions. Cale insisted she stay out of the danger, but she refused, reminding him that she had nursed him back from death and would not abandon him now. Together, they devised a plan to confront the shadowed figures from Cale's past, to secure the truth and protect themselves from those who would seek to exploit him. In the process, Alara discovered not just Cale's hidden history, but also the depth of his humanity, the regrets, the quiet acts of kindness, the longing for redemption. And Cale, in turn, began to see Alara not merely as a savior, but as the anchor that tethered him to the world he had nearly lost. The final confrontation came in the heart of the blizzard, a battle of wits, courage, and resilience against the unforgiving elements and the unseen enemies determined to claim Cale. Through it all, Alara's unwavering resolve and compassion became the lifeline that allowed them both to survive. When the storm finally subsided and the sun rose over a transformed landscape, Cale's memories were still incomplete, but the terror of the past had been faced, and the bond forged in the snow had become unbreakable. In that quiet aftermath, as they stood together amidst the melting drifts and the warmth of a shared victory, Cale turned to Alara, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't remember everything," he admitted, "but I remember you. And that is enough." Alara smiled, a mix of relief and quiet triumph shining in her eyes, knowing that sometimes life's greatest mysteries are not the ones we seek to solve, but the ones we live through, hand in hand with someone who chose to save us when the world had almost given up. And as the camera of life seemed to pull back, leaving them framed against the snow-dusted horizon, a gentle voiceover could whisper to viewers, "Sometimes it takes losing everything to find what really matters." Subscribe and join us for stories that touch the heart, ignite the soul, and remind us all that compassion can change destiny.